Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to go over removal and installation of the stock intake on a GMC Syclone and Typhoon, as well as a possible upgrade you may do. Hang out, check out this video. Thanks for watching. Alright guys, so when you're dealing with the Syclone 4.3 turbo, in stock configuration, this is actually a pretty small turbo. And what that means is to fill this engine up effectively, it's going to be pushing in a lot of hot air because this turbo has to work extra hard. So what that means is the intercooling is significantly more important in a stock configuration than really what matters with the intake. With that being said, let's talk about the intake. So you guys can see mine obviously does not look stock. That's because I dual layered it with actual carbon fiber. So I'll talk about this in a moment, but essentially what we got is you'll have the intake over on the driver's side, and I'm going to show the stock unit installation and removal here, as well as the aftermarket. But essentially the air is drawn in from behind this light here. So the air is going in, essentially coming in the grill around the light, and it squeezes in. If you guys can see, there's this tiny little, let me see, this little hole down in here. It's trying to squeeze in there, everything it has. But because we have a blower, it's actually not having any problem sucking it in. Now, you could argue that difference between a cold air box, which will try to force only cold air in from the front, versus this open, which grabs the engine air that's getting the heat sink from everything. So it's warmer air it's pulling in. But in my particular case, since we're not going ultra high performance, and I not only have upgraded my intercooler, but I have two heat exchangers. I have the RPM dual pass racing intercooler down below. Let's see if you can get a little shot. I hope that's kind of getting, like, so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. I got a dual pass aluminum heat exchanger down below, and in the grill here, I actually, let me see if we can get in here. We have a single pass unit. So no matter how much extra heat is going in from my engine bay here, I am not worried about the performance of the motor. Now, if you want every bit extra performance out, obviously you would want to close this off so you only get cold air into it. That's up to you guys. Now there's the other thing that people do, and this, I'm not going to cover this obviously, but that's where you remove or lower the battery in. You relocate your coolant reservoir right here, and instead you bend the turbo off the turbo this way, and you steal cold air from inside the fender here. Now that's the super high tech approach that a lot of dudes use. And there's even a dude who has one of these yellow Cyclones who he's built, I think it's a Buick Grand National vent right here to actually intake air. So you can get super crazy with this. All right, that's enough talking about this. Now what I'm gonna do is show you guys what the stock system looks like, how to take it apart, replace it, to reinstall it rather, and then what you can do to upgrade even your stock unit. So we'll be right back. All right guys, so jumping into the stock intake. Luckily, unless you're planning on doing any sort of modifications, even if we're just going to be replacing the stock air box with an open filter, the only tools you'll need is either a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket. Having an extension will help a bit. You notice it's just a shorty little extension. Either one of these will work, and having both of them will make sure that you won't really have any issues here. So let's go ahead and take off this stock intake. All right guys, as we get into the intake, this is a very simple design. It doesn't take a whole lot. Starting from the turbo end, we've got our turbo in here. We got the first piece, which is essentially this orange silicone hose, which is the connector directly to the turbo. We then have our crossover tube. We have the primary crankcase ventilation hose that comes in right here. At this end, we got another silicone connector, which connects to our air box. Our air box is connected, and this is right. What you'll see is, you notice on this, we got a Phillips. And you said, Maya, you know, I thought we don't need a Phillips. Well, we don't, because it's a wing nut. So, moving past that, you guys can see there's actually a piece right here that connects, and this is what holds the ducting to the front to make sure the cold air comes out. Now, I'm not actually going to take this out for two reasons. One is we don't need to, and even when we have the, when we replace the air box here with the open filter, what happens is this will still direct cold air that's being accumulated behind the headlight into this little section here. So we will still get the benefit of some cold air. All of this off, I forgot to mention what we want to do. All right, so what we're going to do now is really simple. I like taking this off. First thing I'll do is just unscrew our air box. Now, what I recommend, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the stock intake tube is very delicate and it tends to break at this end and it tends to break at the turbo end. Mine is broken in both, thus the reason why the carbon fiber and having to repair it, which we'll cover in a minute. So what I like to do is I like to take off the hose clamp, not take off, but loosen the hose clamp that is right on here. That way I can carefully move this away from it. And that way I'm less concerned about actually breaking this. If you guys feel safer taking off the other one, that's fine. Before pulling all of this off, I forgot to mention what we want to do is come back and right along, it's hard to see here, let me see. We'll write down this hose. This is a ventilation hose. It feeds back into the side of the air box. And one of the modifications you can do, and we're just going to do this right here. We got to pull this guy out. You just carefully do it because you don't want to hurt anything else around it, right? So you just carefully wiggle it. Sorry, I'm trying to do one-handed. I'm going to pull this out now. And now we have that. I should be able to carefully pull this off. And again, one-handed. Remove the entire air box with the hose still attached. And we're just going to set that there for now. And so what you guys will see right here, this is where it feeds back in. Now, if you're not in California, you can do this. If you are in California like I am, you're not allowed to do this. But what you can do is get yourself something like a nice little K&N. And we can take this, and let me switch my hands here, guys. So, take this guy and place this right on down in there, like so. And now those crankcase gases are just venting through this oiled filter, and most of the actual contamination is literally just getting caught back in the filter anyway. And now you ask Maya, what do I want to do if I want to use my stock airbox still? Because maybe I have a dope K&N filter in there, and I like the idea of getting the cold air out of the front. No, what you can do is get yourself a 3/4 inch, this is for a cane, right? It's where it attaches the bottom of the cane, so when they're walking around, you buy one of these guys, and let me see if I can somehow get this for you guys. So I'm trying to hold this with my feet while I do this. I'm a crazy bastard. Okay. We just pop that off, take this, we're gonna pop it right on there, and bam. Now, you have a closed off air box. It actually looks pretty cool. And we're rocking and rolling, and now you don't have oil going straight into your box unfiltered. All right, so now we're back in the engine bay, and we have the entire filter system taken off. Get a quick view so you guys can see here. Hopefully, I'm not sure how, that light's not the greatest, but so this just feeds in right here. So it'll force feed air even into our other filter right there. Now, for the PVC hose, this is easy. You just unscrew it just a little bit. And it should basically, let me see which, gotta switch hands here. Damn it. All right, I gotta do this with 2 hands. There. All right, real time. And you guys see, okay, that's off already. That just pops off, no big deal. Now, the last thing we gotta do, and this is the only spot where you might really need this extension here. depending on where your hose clamp is for the top of your hose, you know, you just got to figure out how to get in there. So I think I'm going to go underneath this AC hose, right in like so. And this is the other one. People break this with their stock by tightening it down too much. You got a turbo sucking air in. Believe it or not, this hose clamp does not need to be very tight at all. I would almost say if you finger tight this, you're never gonna have an issue. But now that we got that loose, everything's disconnected, what we should be able to do is just, see again, all this stuff one-handed with is always fun. We're gonna push this orange hose down. Okay, what the best thing to do is get the hose clamp loose enough, move it down off here, and then just carefully hold this out. As this end, this is probably the most likely end to get damaged, not to mention the fact that this makes it the easiest to be sucked down and go right into our turbo. All right, so not counting our turbo elbow hose, this is basically our entire system. The crossover tube, got your cold air box, you have the crankcase ventilation from the driver's side, you got the crankcase ventilation from passenger side, and our possible upgraded filter right there if you want to go that route. Gotta love that Jeff. All right guys, now that we have the entire intake taken out, make some repairs to your intake should you need to. We're gonna talk about how to install the crossover tube, and then I'll briefly show the difference between remounting the stock intake or if you want an upgrade to an open element filter. All right, let's do this. All right guys, time to put this bad boy back in. Now, what I'm gonna do is discuss putting this back into place as if you did not have a super hardened, strengthened one like I have right here. Now, first of all, don't be dropping it in there like I do, knowing that mine's carbon fiber and I could knock somebody out with this if I needed to. You gotta imagine that yours is the brittle original plastic and it's going to wanna break. So the first thing I do is I'll just kind of set it down into place across the radiator. And I try to push, you'll figure out where it's gonna sit. Now what you'll notice is you'll find some resistance on this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna carefully move the orange turbo elbow as far up onto this as we comfortably can, and then we're going to tighten it down with our 8mm or your flathead if you want to. Okay, and so this is pretty quick. I'm going to do this real time so you guys are hearing me do this. So, okay, I just squeeze it up on there, no big deal. Now I'm just getting my my hose clamp into play. Of course, this thing doesn't want to work with me for shit, right? The Defender case, amazing for keeping your iPhone safe, shitty for trying to do anything but keep your phone safe. All right, so now I'm snug, finger tight. So like I said, I don't want to go much tighter. Because I know mine is secure, I'm gonna give it, mine's strengthened, I'm gonna give it just a little extra, bam. That's it, that's all I'm doing right there. So that was maybe a quarter turn. All right, so next what we're gonna do, take our PVC pipe, our hose here, just pop it right on there. You guys notice that? And this is fairly loose. And again, this one doesn't need to be super tight. So I'm just gonna, doesn't need to be super tight. We're just gonna snug it. Okay, looks good there. That's it. That's all we want. We could almost force it off if we wanted to without loosening it, but we don't want it to come off that way. And now, all right, because we have a decision to make, we're going to go ahead and put the silicone elbow on to this first. I know we took it off of here first, but this, you could do this either way. You could put it onto your filter first. I actually generally have it on my filter and then I squeeze it on. Okay, now that I got this on here, I'm gonna just give it a little tighten, but not a lot because I wanna be able to move around with this. So, now assuming that we're going with the stock intake, we take our stock intake, bring it on over, and we're just gonna kind of drop it down in here, and you guys can actually see that there are some hooks. I don't know if you can see it right there. There's some hooks where these pieces, there's this piece right here, this little round piece, and you can see it's slotted. And then on the other side, the same thing. So you know this will be mounted in the perfect position that you know the airflow is gonna go into that hole if you get it there. So this is where, and with one hand I doubt I'll be able to do it, I'm gonna have to move this around a bit to be able to, and this is where we're gonna move our hose out of the way. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to drop this in. You guys will have to figure this out on your own because I can't do this with one hand. All right. All right, guys, once you have it into place, what you're gonna do is you're just gonna screw down. I gotta push mine down. I have my intercooler hoses running under here, so it may be a little difficult. Okay, so we got this tightened up. As soon as that's tightened up, we're basically in position. We'll go ahead tighten up our hose clamps. Again, because of the nature of what's happening here, we just need it barely tight. Now, if you are going back to California emissions, of course, we're gonna go ahead, take this hose, and you're gonna insert this, and it'll just pop right on in there where this filter is. It'll pop right on in there, and then this end will attach right on in here, and it'll just float right on in there. Since we are not going to be doing that, what we're gonna do instead, so that's basically the stock setup. Now, if it's legal where you're at, and most places except for here in California it is, what you're gonna do, you're gonna unscrew and make sure that that's loose. We're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take this whole thing off. All right, so now this is gonna go back in till it's smog time. So now we're just gonna carefully, I want you guys to use two hands, not one hand like I'm doing, especially if you have the stock intake, and you're gonna carefully work this on, okay? And now I'm gonna make sure, I'm gonna use both hands, make sure it's perfectly in the right position. All right, once you guys get it into the actual position you want to, try to make sure it's not touching anything like your oil lines or anything. Maybe you'll have to angle it up a bit or something. Now, do whatever you need to do. And we simply, oh, maybe I needed to go tighter. Yeah, that's it. So again, just snug, that's all we need. And now we have our aftermarket free flow K&N filter in there. Obviously use whatever filter you like, whatever looks good, whatever fits your style. Just, just make sure you enjoy whatever you're doing. All right, guys, so this is basically what would be considered a stock setup, except for the open element filter, which now has better insulation from the carbon fiber, the dual layer, and frankly, this is my first time doing actual carbon fiber work, and maybe if it wanted to actually focus, like